Have you ever had a VA claim denied, or you think yours is going to be denied, or you're worried about being denied? Don't worry. Trust me, you are not alone. There are millions of veterans that have been in your same shoes. And don't worry, today we're going to talk about why the VA disability claims fails, whose fault it is, both the veterans and the systems, and what you can do to reduce the chances of getting denied on your first VA claim or your next VA claim. So with that said, let's roll. So why do you want to avoid a denial? So denials lead to frustration. Huge. It leads to self-doubt. Am I wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Am I not service connected? You know, it goes back, if you haven't watched our mentality video, I would recommend that you go back to watch that so you can start to rechange your mentality about VA claims. But it will go back to that. The VA just wants to deny me. They just want to wear me down. And, you know, probably one of the biggest things I've seen is once, and myself included way back in the day, is once you get denied once, you either get so frustrated and angry at the VA that you opt to not make another claim, or you waste 3 or 4 or 5 or 15 years not making another claim because either one, you're still pissed, or two, you know, you don't want to get denied again. So the goal is to avoid the denial so that you don't go through, you know, this irritation, frustration, and delay of not making a claim. So let's look big numbers here, quick reality check on VA claims. Over the last, 2 or 3 fiscal years, the VA's pushing, well over 2 million claims. And last year, early numbers are well over 3 million VA disability claims that they processed. And out of those, approximately 30%, some varies number, 30 to 36 to 38% of claims on initial claims get denied annually. And again, the denial doesn't mean that you don't qualify or it's the end of the process, or, well, the VA said no, so I must not be service connected. Trust me, a denial is not the end. So as we talked about this, we look at the initial denial rates of 30 to 40%, somewhere in there. But you also got to look. The VA is approving 60% for initial claims. So it's not that, every claim that's getting denied or every claim that's getting put in gets denied, right? Because there's still 6 out of 10 that are getting approved. It's the 3 out of 10 that really become frustrating. So looking at this, why do claims fail and who's at fault? Well, one of the biggest claims, or one of the biggest reasons that the VA denies claims, whether it's an initial claim or it's your 5th claim, is a lack of evidence, right? Don't have a current diagnosis, don't have current symptoms, and you don't have a nexus to show that it is service related or service connected, or that in a secondary condition case that condition B is caused by condition A, or condition A causes condition B, however you want to look at it. And that is the veteran's fault. It is your job to provide the big 3 that they need, and you're going to hear this, you're going to see it again in this presentation: current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus to military service, event, or area that you are in. The next one is process issues. So this is a mixture between the veteran's fault and the system's fault. Incomplete forms, missed deadlines, or a poor CMP or compensation and pension, comp and pen, CMP. You're going to hear all 3 of those outcomes. So this is the important part of getting a veteran service officer, because the VA is going to send you a bunch of forms, and a lot of them are going to be confusing. So it's good to have a VSO to be able to call them or set an appointment to go in, take the paperwork, and say, hey, I received this paperwork. I'm not sure what it is. What am I supposed to do with it? Then filling it out incorrectly, or worse, not filling it out at all, and then getting your claim denied right off the bat. Missed deadlines. It is important to have a calendar that has the deadlines on it. So if the VA sends you a form and says we need this back in 30 days or 60 days or 45 days, or you have a compensation and pension exam and you don't miss those, or you miss those, that's a denial. The VA doesn't have the right evidence that it needs, or if it's asking you, I need more information on this, I need more evidence on this, and you don't provide the evidence, the VA will make a decision on what they find or what they have readily available, right? And those often lead to denials. And then lastly, the system, things that aren't your fault. High claim volume. We're talking 2.5 to 3 million claims. Congress is writing the VA to make decisions. The VA is writing the raters to hurry up and make decisions. And when you rush that because it's your job, whether you like it or not, if people are riding your back to make a decision, you're going to make a decision. This is why it's important to build the best claim that you have, so that when it goes in the portal and various people are pulling to get their part of the claim done, they may not see everything. So they may make a denial, either based on their part or their little piece of the evidence without seeing the big picture. They may be rushed. This is why it's important when we talk about the foundations of a claim is getting the proper evidence and then putting it in order. Whether I put it in chronological order from oldest to newest or newest to oldest, whatever form that you decide to do, everything in there tells your story logically, so that you don't go in and give them 85 pieces of medical evidence and somewhere around page 45 is the evidence that they need, because you've put in basically everything that you have, your blood work, your physical exams, the things that don't really matter. So it's important understanding that the rater is under a lot of pressure to give them exactly what they need and in order, so when they pull yours out, it tells your story very clearly, that they don't have to guess and look around and go through page after page of stuff that doesn't matter. The big three, again, current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus to military service. If you don't have one of those, just one of those, I may provide you current symptoms and a nexus. I may give a current diagnosis and a nexus. I may give current symptoms and a current diagnosis, but no nexus. The VA rates on federal law. So if you don't provide them those three, there's a great chance that the VA is going to deny that claim. The other part that is very important, and it probably chaps my ass more than anything, is the compensation and pension, or the CMP exam. Now, your CMP exam is a one-time appointment, either with a VA examiner or, more than likely, a third-party provider that is paid by the VA to do an exam. They will run a checklist. They'll go through the medical evidence you provide them. They'll run a checklist, which is called the Disability Benefits Questionnaire, or DBQ, which you can go online, and you're going to hear me say it over and over again. Go find the DBQ, look at the questions that they're going to ask you before they ask you, and then tailor your evidence and your answers based on the questions that they ask you to the symptoms that the VA is going to give you a rating on. So your one-time appointment, you may see a doctor for 4 or 5 years, have a lot of evidence, and you could go in and in 15 minutes, an examiner can completely wreck your claim. And I can tell you this, I just saw it. I'm working with a friend of mine. He's got a large claim in, and one of those is tinnitus. Tinnitus used to be one of those big three. Claim this, you can't test for tinnitus. But it used to be one of those things where it's like, oh, just claim tinnitus, you can get 10%. He had medical evidence. He had a solid nexus letter from a doctor, and he's got a service-connected traumatic brain injury, which a TBI can cause tinnitus. And he was an aircraft or an Air Force maintenance officer, so he's exposed to the flight line 2 to 3 times a day. Jet noise can cause tinnitus. So there are two potential conditions that he can link his tinnitus to, along with the evidence. He sat down, and the compensation and pension examiner made the decision that in his opinion, that his tinnitus wasn't service connected. So the VA disregarded the evidence. They disregarded his nexus letter from a doctor, a medical doctor, that he had seen multiple times for his traumatic brain injury, and took what the CMP examiner said was not service connected, so they denied the claim. So as we were talking and texting back and forth, I simply told him, hey, this isn't the end. Don't worry about that. We're working with a VSO. I said, we'll go back to the VSO, at a later date. Let's let these play out, but we'll go back to the VSO, and we're going to challenge that claim, whether it's a higher level review, whether it's a supplemental claim, and we provide more information that basically shows the CMP examiner was wrong in his diagnosis, right? But it's not the end. And it's not the time to get frustrated and just give up. So a denial isn't the end. It just means either they need more evidence or you've got to take a different approach. This is key to having a good VSO that knows what they're doing, so that you can go in and say, because they can pull your claim, they can look at all the evidence that you've got, and they can make the decision on, here's the best route I think we need to take. So get a VSO. You don't need a disability lawyer that's going to take, $30,000 of your back pay, to be able to get that. Use a VSO. They're free. They're accredited. They take a federal test right through the VA, so they know what they're doing. Again, you have 15 to 20 minutes to highlight and capture your symptoms and how they affect you. The key out of this: frequency, severity, and the impact on your personal and professional life. So this is, again, we go back to looking at that DBQ, the Disability Benefits Questionnaire. You shouldn't be surprised when they ask you these questions. Look at them beforehand and start to study your answers and go, hey, okay, I know they're going to ask me, what makes it better? What makes it worse? When did these symptoms come on? How does this affect me? You shouldn't be trying to figure out your answers. You shouldn't be trying to figure out where the evidence is, because it should be chronological and you know where it is. So you know when they say, when did this first start? That first piece of paper you can pull out and you can say, here's the first time this is in my medical record, or I was treated for this. What makes it worse? You're looking at all these answers and I can look at the Code of Federal Regulations on how the VA is going to rate me and what symptoms and severity and frequency and impact, and I can highlight those. So take the time before your CMP exam to look up the DBQ and then look up the symptoms from the Code of Federal Regulations, and then make sure that you highlight in your compensation and pension exam so that the examiner can capture those symptoms, frequency, severity, and impact. Your CMP exam isn't for treatment. The guy isn't there to try to fix you or see what's wrong, give you medication, or hey, let me put a referral in for this. They're simply there to gather the evidence that you provide them. So it's important when we start to make copies of our of the medical evidence that we're going to submit for our claim. I always advise people to have a copy for themselves, have a copy that they give the VA, and then make a third copy that you give to the compensation and pension examiner. And again, if I'm doing 4 or 5 claims, I want 4 or 5 piles that are specific information. So if I'm doing neck, back, radiating pain, and migraines, that's 4 piles. So when we go through the compensation and pension exam and he pulls out the disability benefits questionnaire for my back, I can pull out specific evidence just for my back, and I can, as he's asking me questions, because some of them may not touch it, others may want to actually see it. So they ask a question on, well, when did this start? I can show them. Here's the first time it was reported, February 18th, 1999. What are the symptoms? I can show him 2 or 3 pages because I'm going to highlight specific evidence, and we'll get into this one, when we start building up videos on evidence, but I can hand him that so it draws his eyes exactly what he's looking for, and I can make sure that they capture the evidence that I need. But I can tell my story and lay that out in a way that the examiner can see that to say, oh, okay, yeah, that may be service connected. Or, in my opinion, I believe that the migraines that you have are a direct result of the 4 bulging discs in your neck, or maybe it's because of the traumatic brain injury you received, or maybe it's because you have post-traumatic stress or you have a mental health condition that causes constant stress and fear. Therefore, that triggers migraines. You want to be able to, in that 10 to 15 minute block of period that you have, is tell the story on this is how it's connected. Not here's why I think it's connected, because you should have a nexus letter when you go into there. So you can show them, here's a nexus letter from my provider, from my chiropractor, from my physical therapist, from my speech pathologist. You know, you show that there. It shows that examiner that another medical professional is making their opinion on your service connection. So it's very important that they see that, because you want them to agree with whatever provider that has said, yep, I think your knees are a direct result of your flat feet because of whatever rationale they give. Is that you want that examiner to go, I can see that and concur with that. If you don't give that to them, they're going to make their own decision. You want to help sway them by here's my nexus, here's my evidence, here's how it affects me, severity, frequency, and impact, so that in the end, they make that recommendation that your condition that you're claiming is service connected. Because if they aren't, right, it's a good chance that you may net a negative result. And this is why it's important. And we're going to do a whole section on preparation for your compensation and pension exam. And the book that I'm releasing that comes out, How to Build a Strong VA Disability Claim the First Time, which comes out on January 31st on Amazon. I would love your support if you want to do it. But I have an entire section, an entire chapter in that book on just preparing for your compensation and pension exam, so that you can go in there and you can maximize it. So I would recommend, when that book drops on Saturday, or if you're reading this after, or you're watching this after January 31st, is go to Amazon and pick up the book, because it will tell you, it will help to guide you through that compensation and pension exam. So we'll go back to this whole thing. What is the real problem? Part of that real problem is that veterans aren't educated on the process. That's why you're here. That's why I'm spending time with you, sitting here as you're staring behind my kitchen. It's just talking to you about what the problem is and how we can go about fixing that problem. And one of those was showing you how the system works and educating you on the process. Claims are rushed without a plan. You see the videos of here's the top 5 things to claim, how to make these claims, so that you go in and you make that claim, but you don't have a plan because you simply don't understand the process. The VA doesn't do it. If you went to TAPS or TAMPS or retirement, right? They don't sit down and say, hey, here's how you make a solid VA claim. They just don't. So when you don't understand it, you go, well, hey, I have these 3 things, I'm going to claim it. And you don't have a plan to build around it, providing a current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus, it's going to get denied. And then we assume that the evidence is just going to be there, right? We don't really prove it. We've not provided it. We assume that the VA is going to go get it for us. And in turn, the VA will make a decision on the evidence that they have. And if they don't have the evidence, because I assumed, and I did it on my second claim, I assumed when my VSO told me I didn't need to do anything, that the VA would go get the evidence for me. The VA made a decision on 0 evidence that they had and denied my claim for an increase. So we're going to take the assumption that the VA has out of it, and we're going to talk about in future videos on how to build a fully developed claim or an FDC. And on a fully developed claim, we are going to provide the VA everything that they need to make a decision so that you know when that decision is made, if something is missing, it's because you didn't provide it. Take away the VA didn't go get this, the VA didn't do this, the VA didn't do that. Take that part out, take the responsibility to do that, and make a fully developed claim. So how can we correct the problem? One, slow down. Slow down and learn the process. It is important, like don't rush a claim to get a rushed decision to get a denial. If you have a service-connected condition that you know or you think that could be, or you have, let's say you have 3 bulging discs in your neck. You've been to the doctor, you know that connection between your migraines is due to your neck, then call today and call the VA's 1-800 number and simply file your intent to file. You don't have to make the claim. Don't tell them, hey, I'm going to claim migraines, because as soon as you do that, they will file your official claim paperwork. The VA is going to start the ball rolling, and it's going to go very quickly, and you're not going to have the evidence and the plan in place. So simply just call them and tell them, hey, I would like to file my intent to file. They're going to pull the information that would be on the regular sheet, your name, your social security number, your date of birth, your address, your service dates, all that stuff that would be on a regular form. And what that does is, one, most importantly, it locks your back date in. So if I don't do anything, and I could call today and make my claim, but I decide, well, I'm going to wait, I'll start building my claim. And then 4 months later, I go to VSO and I go, hey, I want to file this. I lost 4 months of back pay. Now think about it. If my claim goes up and let's say I get $1,000, right? I'm missing $4,000 of a tax-free back pay. So if you think you have a claim or you know you have a claim, call today. It'll cost you 25, 30, 40 minutes of your time to file your intent to file, lock your back date in, and then that will put you on a 12-month clock to, at some point in the next 12 months, file your official claim paperwork and provide the medical evidence that you need. So get your intent to file in today, lock your back date in, but then slow down, learn the process, and watch these videos. Grab that book, right? How to make a strong VA disability claim the first time, and then start to understand and then start to slowly build in chunks that case that you're going to make a claim on. Research what the VA needs to properly rate you, right? This is under the Code of Federal Regulations or the CFR Schedule of Ratings Handbook. So again, you can go through and see exactly how the VA is going to rate you by percentage. So when we look at this, if I do migraines go like 0, 10%, 30%, and max is at 50%. On the left-hand side of that document, it will give you a list of symptoms and severity and frequency. And on the right-hand side, it will correlate a number. So if you have, let's say, more than 3 prostrating migraines, prostrating simply means you have to lay down in a dark space and you can't do anything. If you have more than 3 of those that provide an economic impact, that is a 50% rating. So if I know that, I need to make sure that I capture that in my evidence. Or if I'm doing a post-traumatic stress or depression and anxiety, I look at what the symptoms are. I want to, one, make sure that I highlight those symptoms in my therapy sessions. Because if they're not in your notes and they're not adequately captured, and I go to my compensation and pension, and all of a sudden I have all these ratings from the 50, 70, and 100% categories, but I've never talked about them to my therapist, the compensation and pension examiner and the VA is going to look at that as a fraudulent claim. But if I start to address those relationship issues, anger, inability to focus, inability to keep a job, suicidal ideations, if those are in my medical evidence because they're in my therapist notes, and I address them in my compensation and pension, and they can put those two together, there's a good chance that you're going to get the rating that you do. So make sure that you go through the Code of Federal Regulations. Easiest way to get there is Google or Bing or whatever your preference of search engine is, and just put mental health, post-traumatic stress, VA, disability compensation, CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, whatever you want to put in there. The first 4 or 5 parts you're going to see on your claim, on that search engine is lawyers' websites. And the good thing about a lawyer's website is, one, I'm going to tell you, don't use a lawyer, but use their websites because it has all the information that you need in there. But towards the bottom of their blogs that they have, there's usually a link to that Code of Federal Regulations. So take the time to look up what the VA needs and then provide it to them. If they need symptoms, give them the symptoms they need. If they do range of motion, give them the range of motion that they need. And then build your claim to provide the VA with all the evidence they need. That's writing a personal statement, which we'll cover. Giving them all the evidence, the targeted evidence that they need, built in a logical, chronological order. Buddy statements. We'll talk about buddy statements and how to get those, because it's what they call lay evidence, right? Somebody that can write you a statement on if they knew you before or what happened during an event or after the event. You want a buddy statement that is built to provide a strong buddy statement is going to lay in some of that evidence, to lay in some of those symptoms that you need captured. So it's important to not just have somebody that goes, yeah, I know Ryan, he's all messed up in the head, and yeah, he probably needs a disability rating. No, you want them to capture what symptoms that they see, mood changes, and everything that a VA rater looks at that and actually takes into account and doesn't go, yeah, I read the buddy statement, it's not credible, right? So I'm not even going to use it. And then most importantly, that nexus letter. We'll talk about, and in the book, if you don't have a nexus letter, how to build that nexus yourself. So it is important to be able to tie that service-connected disability you're trying to get to an event or to your service. So you can do this actually in 2 ways. You can do that partly in your personal statement, and you can line out how these two connect, and then you can make it stronger with a nexus letter. So as we covered all that, and we're in the beginning stages of this, hopefully you're starting to follow along in our foundational playlist, but you're going to see this channel is nothing but education over hype, right? Understand the process, learn things on like this video on how denials are, how they work, why people get denied, and then how we can reduce. The key word is reduce. We talked about the system and some of those things that can get you denied. So it's important that you don't think that, I'm going to watch this denials and it's going to completely remove it, because there are certain pieces that we covered that you cannot, that is out of your control. So we're going to teach you what you need. We're going to cover processes over shortcuts. One of the things that irks me is when I see those, top 3 things that you can claim today, and then people get denied out of it, and then they get pissed because it goes back to this whole presentation on why did I get denied? Did you provide current diagnosis, current symptoms, a nexus? Did you tell your story? Did you highlight your symptoms in your compensation and pension? It is not a given. Yeah, there might be the top 3 or top 5 or top 10 things that the VA approves, and you may have those. But if you're not telling a story and you're not providing them everything they need, there's a great chance that you're going to fall into that 30 to 40% denial claim. So we're going to take time to teach you the process. That's why it's important today to get your intent to file in. And then over the next 3 or 4 months, as you continue to learn the process, continue to educate yourself, and then you slowly start to build the best claim that you have, so that if it gets denied and it is not your fault, you already have the claim ready to go back to your VSO to go, here's all the evidence I have, what's my next step, versus trying to figure it out, because now you've got to go back and build a claim because you didn't understand it. So take the time to understand the process and start building claims, strong claims, with all the evidence that you need, told in a chronological order that paints a picture that rater can look back, that compensation and pension examiner can look at and go, yes, this makes sense to make this service connected. This makes sense to make this a secondary condition because condition A is causing condition B. So take the time to build those claims up front. And while it may take you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to really build, because when you start to look at the evidence, if your evidence is weak and it's not a lot, don't rush it. You have 12 months from your intent to file. It's just tell yourself, I'm going to take the next 3 months and I'm going to get as many appointments as I can so that I can build a strong base of evidence to make a claim to reduce my chances of denial. And remember that the denial is not the end. Right? If you've been denied, oh well, right? Your claim isn't hopeless. Your claim isn't broken. There's something in there that's missing. And that could be missing from your part on what you need to provide, or it could be missing from the system. And that could be nothing more that a rater didn't have the proper information. They rushed a claim. The compensation and pension examiner made a wrong decision. Right? So it's not the end. Re-examine what you have. Go to your veteran service officer and figure out, what is my plan? What is my next steps I need to take? Here's what I got. What do I need to get to strengthen the claim? And then use this channel to simply leverage your knowledge. Leverage your knowledge on how to make a solid claim so that you can go in and take care of business and get a VSO. So, what do I want you to do now? If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I ask that you simply subscribe and you follow us as we continue to educate and build the process, and together we look at how we can make you successful and building solid claims and understanding the process. Sign up to receive our 3 free checklists. They're free. They don't cost you anything, right? And these 3 free checklists are going to help you to, 1, first off, understand the claims process. 2, set your mentality, keep your mentality in check. And then 3, start to look at what you have and answering specific questions that could be potential claims for you and what you have as far as evidence and what you need to do. And in this, you start to build smarter claims. So with that, and until next time, slow down, continue to learn the process, and build claims the right way. And we'll see you in the next video.